All right, anxious anticipation. Is that what this is? Hi, everybody. I'm Aaron Weiner. I am a founder of the Wisdom House Collaborative, kind of a co-founder. Just real briefly about myself, I'm born and raised Nebraskan, grew up in Omaha, I resolved business disputes as a lawyer for 25 years. I like to say people thought I was a trial lawyer, but we didn't get to trial very much. We resolved almost everything. Did about what you could with that, moving along on a 25-year career. And my wife showed me this book that said, what if you treat sounds and sights the same way you treat thought, or what if you treat thoughts the same way you treat sights and sounds? Like, or you know you're sad the same way you know you're cold. You feel it, right? Or roses are red. Who owns that response that happened in the mind when I said that? Is that a little voice in the head? Who is that? So this got my curiosity about something called mindfulness, and I picked it up, and I kind of had wished someone had told me about it sooner. So we started this program, a nonprofit, to cultivate mindfulness in the community. So that's a little bit about who I am. And since then, I'm familiar with something called mindful schools, and kind of a cheerleader of a way to learn about this, and we can talk about that. Some of my other training has come through what they call mindfulness-based stress reduction. So kind of generally my background on that. Let's check in with everybody here. If I say, how are you? What do you do? How many people just knee-jerk respond to a question like that? Don't really check to see how you are. So now, really check. How many of you have heard about a mood meter? Anybody heard about the mood meter? They ask you to check your energy level and your pleasantness level. What's your energy level right now? Pretty low. I feel like if this was after school program, I'd have you all stand up and play catch. Why don't we try a little bit of an exercise? I'm pivoting. This is after school program for me. All right. If we don't, has anybody got something that might get spilled? Keep an eye on it. I like to play catch a lot. If you can see somebody's name tag, welcome them by name. Say good morning, welcome, wish them well. Melinda, great to have you here. Good morning, hi. Kelly, hi. Good morning is a good attitude no matter when. Rachel, hi. Patricia, hi. Welcome. Samantha, hi. Welcome. Molly. Sarah with an H, my fave. Hi, Deb. Hi, Molly. Nice catch. All right, Ashley. Welcome, people. Give them a hearty good morning. Good afternoon. Hi, Ashlyn. Hi, Brooke. Hi, Brooke. I'm Aaron. All right. So now check again. How are you? How do you know? So anyway, I'm trying to get it all together. We'll see how it goes. All right. So what's all this about mindfulness? Actually, I was in this very building, started doing this in 2016. And since then, we're in several after-school programs. We teach at Brownell Talbot. We've worked with 7 major social service agencies in Omaha. So a lot's happened in 5 years. I'm looking at my notes, 2016. So here we are. All right, we'll get down to it. So we're going to talk about what is mindfulness, why you might be interested in mindfulness, how it works, a little bit of brain science, and how it can work in education and counseling. We'll do a short demonstration and some questions and answers. But feel free to raise your hand at any point, this is my talking stick. We'll see how good I can throw and how well you can catch. Moving right along. So mindfulness is awareness. Awareness. Like right now, are you aware? What's going on with you? It's an awareness that arises when we pay attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So this is just one definition. We'll talk about this guy, John Kabat-Zinn. This is sort of a medical definition, but as you can see, somebody is wanting to see something in a curious, non-judgmental way. They want to see what's in there. So we're going to break down this definition. So we're going to pay attention on purpose. How often do you pay attention on purpose? Do you know you're paying attention? So if I say, look at my hand, attention might move there. You direct it, right? Paying attention on purpose. And then this idea, if you want to understand your mind, sit down and study it. So I thought I was going to go to college, and someone must have figured out how to be happy and written it down somewhere, and I just needed to take the class. And then I studied philosophy and psychology, and they taught me in comparative religion, and they taught me how to train a rat to go through a maze. They taught me behaviorism, but no one, at least that I caught, said, if you want to understand this thing, sit down and study it. Be your own psychologist. Be your own emotion scientist. How does this organism operate? And all of us here, this is the most sophisticated, complex, beautiful thing in the known universe, and they don't ask us to use it as our own laboratory to see how it works. So I thought that was just important news, that if we wanted to understand how our heart-mind system works, that we could sit down and study what we have right in front of us, moment to moment, all the time. So awareness from paying attention on purpose to what? What's ever going on? We all know about the five senses. Right now, you might know you're seeing, you might know you're hearing. Maybe you can feel the chair. Are there any smells in the room? Sound from the other room? Are you aware of thoughts, though, as a sense? Know whether you're thinking or not thinking? Are there emotions present? How do you know? So what happens when we see our thoughts and emotions as just another sensation and not our identity? So I had to run back out to the car because my ball was missing, but not in it, aware of it. Does that make sense? Is that working? So we're not in our heads, we're aware of what's going on in our heads. In fact, we go into our body. Usually we're not in our body, we don't know what we're feeling in our body, we're not paying any attention to it. But there's a lot of information here about what's our mood, what's our emotion. And most of us aren't used to checking in and actually answering the question, how are you, by actually checking to see how we are. We talked about how we were this morning or how we might be later. But pretty often, we don't even know how we're doing right now. We're too busy thinking about yesterday or tomorrow. So what happens when we see our thoughts and emotions as another sensation and not our identity? Then we can start to study them. We can be our own best doctor and say, well, this microphone is no fun. We can be our own best friend and our own best physician, not pushing away, oh, here you come with your bad habits again. That would be a bad physician, right? You don't want your doctor to just shame you for the fact that something negative might be going on. On the other hand, you don't want your physician or your best friend to say, well, don't worry about it, it'll all be fine, and just brush it off that way. We want to know exactly what's going on and say, hey, what's really going on? Oh, this is going on and that. And it's a mix of resentment and fear, and this is what's going on. And you can feel it in your body and start to signature it. So there's a lot of information that comes when we start to pay attention on purpose to what is the experience happening right now, and breaking it down to, is it predominantly one of the five senses, or right now am I lost in thoughts, or am I caught up in an emotion? This is freedom. Being in it, we're getting yanked around. We believe the thought, It says that person over there deserves to be flipped off because they're a bad driver, and it just happens right away. So if we say, oh, well, there's a thought, oh, wait, that might be someone's grandmother or whatever that you're about to do that to. That actually happened in my life, where a friend of mine did that to my own grandfather. So a lot of power in knowing what's happening as it's happening. Okay, so we're paying attention on purpose to these sense doors, including the sixth sense of mind objects. When are we paying attention? You're all here, you probably heard something about the present moment being a big deal, right? What's the big deal? Right? Are you present right now? Pretty ordinary. The reason we think that the present moment is important, well, one, let's just talk about this. Now will soon be the past. So I always used to think of the past being like kind of in charge. But in fact, we're making the past right now. If there's kindness now, there will be more kindness in the past. If there's clarity now, there will be more clarity in the past, right? And we're shaping the future. The future really never gets here, right? Never does. It's always going to be now. And for all of our ancestors and for all of the pains and hard work and also the love and compassion that they produced, all of that, when they said they imagined a better future, when were they thinking? Now. All of that ends up being now. And now then is this creative moment, the only creative moment you get to intend something. This is it. We either do or don't in this moment. We either initiate something in this moment or not. All the creativity's got to happen now. Past is too late, future never gets here. Whatever you want to create, whatever you want more of, that has to start now. Whatever you want less of, that has to start now. So we're paying attention on purpose to what's happening in the now. And the benefits of that is 100% creativity, creating the past and shaping the future and having the experience that you want to cultivate right here and now. And that's going to be your opportunity and the only opportunity you're ever going to have. It's always going to be now. Oh, and by the way, if anybody has any questions or comments or anything I say doesn't make sense or seems strange, just raise your hand. I would appreciate that. So this is kind of the tricky part. So non-judgmentally, for those of you who are doing SEL things, they talk about being an emotion scientist, whereas we're studying emotions. So if you're being a scientist, you want to be objective. You're not in the experiment. You're wanting to see how things work with an open mind and an open heart. And if we have this energy of curiosity, and sometimes we talk about beginner's mind, it's hard to push anything away when we're curious about it, even if it's unpleasant. So after school program, usually in our class, like we ask the kids, what's the first thought they notice when we ask them to pay attention to something? Is like, I'm bored. All right. So what's that like? What kind of destructive things do we do when we're bored and we can't bear to be with the boredom? I mean, learning to be with boredom, or at least study it or be curious about it, is hugely powerful. So, but if we cultivate this curious attitude, does that make sense that you can cultivate that? Curiosity, we're not just born with a certain amount of curiosity, we can practice it and make it stronger. That'll be on another slide. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but so this attitude of discerning. So we're not saying that judgment isn't an important part of the human experience, but we're saying what we want to practice is something larger than judgment. Discernment. What's happening now? If it's unpleasant, am I about to say something that I might want to take back later, right? If it's a bad smell, I'm going, oh my God, who did that, right? We want to catch things early so that we can steer better, know what we're doing. So we're going to cultivate a non-judgmental, discerning attitude. And curiosity is really good. So we're not pushing away the stuff you don't want to be a bad physician pushing away what you don't want to hear, right? You want to see it clearly. Oh, this is what's happening. Someone said something that hurt my feelings, and this is how it is right now. And we do a lot of, instead of saying, I'm afraid, we'll say, oh, fear is like this. This is what it feels like in the body, right? Being judgmental feels like this. Right now, I'm feeling like I'm judging what's happening. I don't like it. Everybody else should bow to my current opinion. So very powerful stuff there. All right, so we all know this, right? I'm preaching to the choir, I am sure. We are cultivating fragmented attention. So now is the time to be intentional about cultivating steady attention, clear attention, monitored attention, because particularly for our young people, and it's true for me as an adult, so I really shouldn't even say young people, we get a dopamine hit every time we get something on the phone. We are antsy for it. People are if you try to grab, anybody ever try to take a phone away from a student? What's the reaction? Boy, I mean, apoplectic. I've learned to not do it. We try to use it as an impulse recognition. It's like, well, if you're going to touch your phone, you got to raise your hand at least, and we'll make some rules. We'll make some rewards. We'll make something out of this. But so here we are. We're a distracted. Distractions being cultivated in the society, and we really don't multitask as well as we single task. I mean, you can do 2 things okay, 3 things is good for a juggler, 4 things for an organist, but most of us, we do best with 1 thing at a time. All right, so this slide I'm putting up, we sort of already talked about, you usually see the person in bliss, right? You think of people practicing mindfulness and they're out in a garden or they're out in nature. But what I just said was actually the ultimate truth of starting. When I first did this, I found out that my body hurt and I was tired. I had to learn to be with discomfort. Learning to be with discomfort is hugely powerful, so we're not just constantly hiding from it, trying to cover it up and chasing pain relief nonstop, numbing. So that's a bit of a misnomer. So there's in doing this practice, we're learning to not scratch every itch. We're learning when we are about to, and we might see these itches go away by themselves. So that's why I have her picture up. Anybody recognize Dan Harris up there? He wrote a book. I have him up there. He had a panic attack on air, and then he sort of discovered this mindfulness stuff and wrote a book called 10% Happier. So I like that. For me, if I'm 10% happier and my spouse then might be 10% happier and our daughter might be 10% happier and my coworkers might be 10% happier, would that be worth an effort? Would it be worth 15 minutes a day? I don't know. I think the actual studies on this, because there's so many studies, I just kind of quit following them, but say actually in school, if we did this and they take you through the Mindful Schools curriculum, the kids are basically 7% better off. How's that? 7% better memory, 7% more impulse regulation. Would that be worth it? So this guy in the corner is John Kabat-Zinn, the black and white. So the reason why we're here talking about this in public schools, in the late 70s, he was at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center and created an 8-week program that basically involves 45 minutes of practice a day. And then at the end of 8 weeks, there was like a day-long retreat. And they measured people's blood before, during, after, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, right? And he started documenting the benefits of this practice as a medical thing. So basically turning what sages from various cultures have known for thousands of years and creating medical evidence as to the benefits of this, bringing it into more of the realm of medicine than, what do you want to call it, philosophy, religion, contemplation. Let's see. Anderson Cooper, I have him up there because he was sort of a skeptic, and after taking a weekend retreat became a regular practitioner. All right, so they showed that just practicing for 15 minutes a day, basically, improves learning and memory retrieval, improves emotional regulation, reduces stress and anxiety, eases depression, strengthens the immune system, increases tolerance of chronic pain, improves sleep, improves empathy and well-being. So not a bad set of benefits. When I talk about 15 minutes of practice is like going to the gym and doing something intentionally for 15 minutes, you can practice this all day long, being present with what's happening non-judgmentally with some curiosity. You can do all day long, whenever you remember to do it. But it's the on purpose part and not getting caught up in the judgment. Judgments are going to happen. What is that student doing over there? I don't like it. Being aware of that before you speak out or knock their feet off the desk, right? Having that presence of mind. We'll talk about kind of that moment of clarity. So this was news to me, and oddly, I think people, when I was growing up, sort of said you were sort of born with your character. You're kind of who you were. There wasn't going to be a lot of changes. People were sort of stuck with their temperaments. They used to think that the brain wasn't changing much. So they now know that you guys know brain cells are called neurons. So now they said the neurons that fire together wire together. So what we do, we get more of. So when we're intentional about something, we have a behavior, and if we make that a practice, it will become a habit. So this idea of cultivating more presence of mind, more openness, is something you can cultivate and literally rewire your neural system. You've got nerves all around here. Most early warnings come from up in here, and they rise up and they come through your spinal cord, or things come straight through your olfactory, right? Warnings and dangers. So our threat system comes up through the body, and how we respond to that is something that we can cultivate. It's not, so every moment is a creative vote for what you want. So just doing this for 1 second isn't a lot of votes, but the more often you pay attention on purpose and recognize what's happening as it's happening, the more often you're going to do that. The more times you practice kindness, the easier it's going to be. The more times that you practice curiosity, the more often you're going to get it. So they call that neuroplasticity. So just like any other muscle, that when you exercise it, it gets stronger. When you exercise presence of mind, if you want to put it that way, you'll get more of it. When you want to be mindless and spacey, you can get more of that. So we sort of started our baselines, but we now know that these things, they literally, they have these machines now that can look and see what's going on with your brain without having to cut you open. So they can see that if you actually go through John Kabat-Zinn's 8-week class, the most evolved part of your brain up here, the prefrontal cortex, gets thicker. And the amygdala system, which is your fight, flight, or freeze center, they like to say comes into regulation, because most of us have inflamed fight, flight, or freeze system because we're watching the news and seeing threats everywhere that aren't really here. I mean, not present in this room, right? In this room right here, are we as safe as human beings get? Ever in history? This is actually a very, very safe place. The present is almost always way safer than the past. Has a lot of regrets, and the future's got lots of uncertainty and fears. Right here and now is a fairly safe home base to be. So the more we're here, the less activated we are, the more we're in our wise brain. And the more we practice being in our wise brain, the more we'll be in our wise brain, our wise caring brain. What we frequently think and ponder becomes the inclination of the mind, is an ancient saying, and it's an interesting thing to know. Any questions about that? That's sort of my brain science slide. Okay, so we're saying now that this mindfulness is a human capacity for observing and training the mind. Like I said, there's, like in Buddhism, they have the eightfold path to relief from suffering, and mindfulness is one of the eightfold path. Concentration is one of the eightfold path. Effort's one of the eightfold path. Non-harming. So in New Testament, they talk about getting the plank out of your own eye. I mean, clearly wise, caring people have known that what you practice, you will get more of. They know about humans, but no tradition really owns this, because who says they own the practice of kindness? Can anybody claim that? And now that we know that our physiology is responding, our anatomy is literally responding to practice, who owns that? This is just the human ability. It's a human capacity. So mindfulness is the human capacity for observing and training the mind. So out of Mindful Schools, which is the curriculum that I'm sort of the cheerleader for, and by the way, sort of a disclaimer, I like cheerleaders, good for me. I don't want to be seen as like the perfect demonstration of this practice. I find it highly beneficial, but I am hardly the professor of this sort of thing, right? I'm just a fan. But what we're saying here is these two wings, when we know what's going on within our attention, we get impulse recognition. When we have impulse recognition, we have the opportunity for impulse influence. The control is a strong word for me, but this ends up in emotional regulation. So if we want to cultivate emotional regulation, we begin with paying attention. I don't know if you guys remember an experiment. If they could have a child, they offer them a marshmallow and say, if you can wait 5 minutes to eat that marshmallow, we'll give you another one. And for the kids who did well on that test, when they were 30, those kids were way happier by their own assessment than the kids who couldn't wait. And they kind of found out that the kids that could wait created strategies to get them to not just grab the marshmallow. But I think this is as important a skill as you can have, is to just have that split second between wanting to grab something or wanting to say something, and then figuring out, well, what are my values in this moment? And how do I implement my values? How do I implement my chosen values? So we call our after school programs called the Empowered Minds Club, named by Tracy White, which I appreciated. So what we're really trying to do is find the space between stimulus and response. Has anybody heard that phrase before? It actually comes from somebody who is attributed to somebody who was in the concentration camps as a psychologist, and he was studying what led to people being more miserable and what led to people coping well. And he says it's this ability to stay in the present and be able to choose how you want to respond rather than reacting to what's happening. Recently, my wife found a poem that said, basically, how we are is 10% what happens to us and 90% our attitude towards what happens. And at least that's where our power is. Where's our greatest power? Our intention is something that we probably have the most influence over. What's our intention? What happens after that is sort of a mix, right? But at least to cultivate an intention that gives you meaning and agency on how you want to respond to things is pretty powerful. So most of the time we're kind of having our monkey mind, right? With this attention is drawn here and there, and then we start thinking about this. We hear a sound over there. It makes me think, oh, I wonder what they're up to. Wish I was over there. They're having more fun. You know what I mean? It's this is totally what our normal attention system wants to do for good reason. But it can also sort of run amok, right? We're just lost all the time. We also hop on these trains of thought. We don't even know that we hopped on. We don't know where they're going. Just one thing after another. And then we wake up to the fact that we've been kind of spacing out for 5 minutes, right? And I like this, was the most meaningful when I first started teaching this. Knowing whether you're in the storm or looking at the storm. So it can still be storming. There could be some intense emotions going on. But if we know what's happening, there's power. So I like the idea is when we become mindful, it's all of a sudden, okay, we're a bit in the eye of the storm. It's like, all right, this is going on. I'm aware of it. How do I want to respond to this? And cultivating that, and then you'll get more of it automatically. So usually it's just kind of waking up. Hey, wait, something intense is going on. Wake up. So we practice, and we got little bozos that we have for our lessons. Every time we're paying attention on purpose with this sort of curiosity, it's like putting some weight in the bottom of the bozo. So every moment of mindfulness is skillful in that it helps us become more resilient, not get so knocked over, right? To be more stable in the face of things. And even if we do get knocked over this way or that way, we come back more quickly. So I like the idea of filling the base and having more resilience. So we also do a lot of what we call heartfulness exercises, like we did when we said good morning. We do gratitude practices and well-wishing practices. I like to start out asking the students, what is your greatest wish for yourself and others? And then have them well-wish to the whole group. They all get to know what they're wishing for each other that day. And most of them haven't even thought of it. It's like, what is it? Or you could say, what's the most important thing? What's the most important thing? To you, what is the most important thing? It's an intense question. Most important thing might be to think about what's the most important thing and remember it. So again, trying to figure out what your values are. So, but anybody ever heard of negativity bias in here? Something goes wrong and it sticks with you all day long and you're still thinking about it the day or two after. So that we are programmed to have threat be first. So something bad happens and that gets our attention. Threat gets our attention. A lot of these threats are not actually as threatening as we think because they're something happening far away. To counter that, the heartfulness is to open a different system of well-wishing and gratitude that helps us welcome the unwelcome. Does that make sense? We're cultivating this curiosity, this welcome, and it helps. So we have the students do gratitude bracelets. We ask them to have 10 things they're thankful for, because it's usually, you can come up with 5 pretty easy, but at the end of one of them the other day, the guy said window glass. Anybody ever think to be grateful for window glass? I mean, so it's like, wow, we can be inside and see outside. That's great. You can drive a car and not have to wear goggles. Even those, I mean, how would that work? I don't know. So kids come up with some pretty interesting answers. So as the adults in the room, we really promote, even if you don't want to teach this, if you were interested in practicing it, the adults are the emotional regulation in the room. How the adult is doing in the room has a big influence on how the room is going. So we see that the kids can mirror what they see from adults. They learn from what they see from adults. And so what we do ripples through our communities. How we are in each moment ripples through the communities. And in the Mindful Schools curriculum, they talk about a study over 20 years for 5,000 people. And that they showed that if you're happier, your friends are happier, your friends' friends are happier, and your friends' friends are happier. We have little happiness generator communities throughout our communities. And my guess is that the negative energy is even more powerful. So, you know what I mean when I say that? So, but what we do really matters and does ripple throughout. Now we know that it affects our own neural system. What we do, we will get more of. And now we know that what we do will affect everybody that we're in contact with. You meet somebody at the store, the cashier, if you're in a certain mood, that affects them in a certain way. If they're in a certain mood, that affects you in a certain way, right? Every contact we have as we're driving cars and the rest of it is rippling through our community. Used to use the word contagious, but it's not so funny anymore, right? Okay, so we can be mindful of all experience. There's nothing outside of it. Whatever's happening, we can be aware of it with this curiosity. Any posture, you normally see people going to the gym lab and we'll sit and do something, or we can do something standing, laying down. And in fact, knowing why you're moving. Why am I getting up to go to the kitchen? I'm not even hungry. It's just, I was bored. I had some discomfort. So even knowing why you're moving, we're adding thoughts and emotions. Very important, this idea of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. We divide experience into those categories because if something's pleasant, what happens? You're grabbing that second bite of ice cream before you finish the first, right? Not even tasting the end of the first because you're so excited about the second, right? If something's unpleasant, what happens? Frustration, blame, maybe speaking out, maybe physically acting out. So we want to catch things at the root. The root is that was pleasant or unpleasant, and then what happens afterwards flows. Neutral is sort of like, well, that didn't catch my, that's not very interesting. I'm gonna go find something pleasant or unpleasant. I'm just spacing out because nothing here is grabbing my attention. So we want to notice there's sort of a debate about thought. I like the one teacher that says, well, no toothache, it's not so bad. On the other hand, people say, well, don't be pushing away the unpleasant because it's part of life. Pleasant comes with unpleasant. We wouldn't know what one was without the other. So we're getting life experience into its component parts, to its elements, so that we can study it and see how it works and start to steer and operate intentionally. So we're aware of intention and volition. This other thing of arising and passing away becomes noticed. We start to see that our moods change. Someone will say, how was your day? And it's going to be all this or all this. But in truth, isn't it a bunch of this? So there's freedom in seeing for yourself through your actual experience that the unpleasant stuff is going to change, and also that the pleasant stuff is going to change. And when we watch it happen in our exact experience, we start to struggle with life less. We're not surprised that everything doesn't go smoothly all the time. We start to say, okay, that is the nature of it. When I wake up in the morning, what I think the day is going to be and how it actually turns out is almost never even remotely close to the same. So we're starting to learn to surf the waves a little more skillfully. Okay, so mindfulness and education. I mean, there's a variety of things that we do, and I've talked about some of them. The mindful sitting is there just as sort of a gym lab. We'll maybe try a little bit of it. I might do mindful standing with this group. This body scan is moving our attention through the body in a curious way, sort of lighting up all the nerve endings, all the way down to your toes and all the way back up, and just making this a more sensitive instrument by using it. The neurons that fire together wire together. There is a trauma-informed side to this. There's a lot of people who don't want to feel their body on purpose, and we're not going to make anybody do anything. With mindfulness, it should always be permissive. People should be able to pass and not participate. So that's an important sort of stewarding idea. We talked about the mindful walking. This kind of looks funny, but we ask people to slow down and get out of their autopilot and notice the lifting and moving and placing the sensation of their feet, which is going to be in contrast to their thoughts. If they're thinking about lunch, right? We want them to start to see thoughts as thoughts, not necessarily the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. There's a law school curriculum with this. So if we can unvelcro from thoughts, then we can question them. Thoughts are a wonderful assistant, and some people say a horrible boss, right? If you believed everything that came into your head. We do mindful eating. It's a great way to go through all the senses and to see anticipation and impulses as we eat and try to slow down. So there's a variety there, and it really mixes well with the SEL curriculum. So mindfulness is a practice and a way of being. It's just something that you can choose to do and cultivate. Knowing about it helps in a way. They call that perspective taking. It's kind of nice to know that you can cultivate your character and do it a moment at a time and practice. You'll get more of what you practice, and that it's available. But you have to actually do it. If you don't go to the gym, you could know you could go to the gym, but if you don't actually go to the gym, you know what happens, right? You can see this is the result. So would you like to do a practice? I'm seeing sort of tired. Do you guys want to stand up? Let's stand up for a minute. Let's try standing up. Just to start. So feel your feet. Take your attention down to your feet. How do you know the ground is there? Can you feel your shoes, your socks? What do your legs feel like? So you weren't noticing this at all. If you probably weren't noticing it before because you weren't paying attention to it. So a simple mindfulness exercise we call 2 steps, 1 breath. Just feel your weight move onto your right leg. Maybe bend your knee a little bit, and you feel the other one get light. So you could maybe tap your toe, and then go the other way. Feel the other leg get heavy. The other one get light. And then we're going to take 1 intentional breath. Breathe in to the count of 4. And hold it. And then we're going to let go all the way to the count of 7. Let it go, 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 let it go. So this is a very simple grounding exercise that people can do anytime. And again, kind of cultivating that embodiment, working with the intention, working with the intention. Let's grab a seat. Grab a seat. Another really basic thing, you're breathing all the time, right? That's happening in the present. So if you feel comfortable, again, this is always permissive. I'm just going to put this thing down. So we talk about, with the kids, we talk about having a mindful body. So if you sort of grab an upright, attentive, proud position here, maybe feel your feet on the floor. And if you're comfortable letting your eyes close, that'll kind of open your interior landscape a little bit. If not, maybe taking a soft gaze in front of you. And I'm just going to ring this bell. The first thing I want you to pay attention to is the sound of the bell. And just aim and sustain your attention on it and listen to it all the way through. I'm going to give 3 bells. Listen to it all the way to the end, and then you can raise your hand when you can't hear it anymore. It does make for a good hearing test. Now just check in with your body again. What's your energy level? What's your pleasantness level? Just cultivating that embodiment. And now I'm just going to lead a little bit of the breathing exercise. If you like just listening and you don't like feeling your breath, just go ahead and just listen to the room. If you're okay feeling your breath, this is what the OPS grounding idea is. So breathing in, you know you're breathing in. How do you know? Breathing out, you know you're breathing out. Take a deep breath. Breathe in deep. Breathe out slow. Importantly, just let your breath return to normal. What would it be like to breathe in some calm? Calm like, not requiring it, just interested. You breathe out some ease. What's ease feel like? Now let's breathe in a smile. Not requiring anything, but what's a smile feel like? And then they say release. Let it all go. Breathing in, we know we're breathing in. Breathing out, we know we're breathing out. So I'll give you a bell again, just follow it all the way to the end and then raise your hand when you can't hear it. And again, we're cultivating this check-in. Just check in with yourself as a dear friend. How am I right now? Totally accepting it however it is, non-judgmentally, just to know. All right, so that's mindfulness exercises. Does anybody have a question or comment about that? Anybody notice any thoughts during that they would be willing to share? Because usually our attention spans are There's nothing wrong with a lot. One of the big things is they think with mindfulness, we're going to stop our thoughts. Most of us, our system emits thoughts every few seconds. It's normal. They're saying that we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts every day, most of them completely repetitive. So I want to throw that out there. It's not that where's my ball? It's not that we're going to quit thinking. It's that we're going to become aware of thoughts as thoughts. That thought says that person is evil and deserves to be punished. I don't have to believe that thought completely. I can say, okay, that person saw something they didn't like and they're acting this way. What's my chosen response? What's my valued response? Do you know what time it is? 3 minutes left. So I like this picture. That's why I like it in the slideshow. Bear attention. There's a lot of, we use the word focus a lot. There's a lot that you can do with attention. You can have open attention, like you could listen to the whole room right now. Or you could have narrow attention and say, oh, I just want to aim my attention narrowly. But it can be focused either way, as long as it's clear, it's focused, right? So we do have concentration practices that we do. They're very important to support sustaining the mindfulness, and the mindfulness helps sustain the concentration. But attention can be monitored, it can be broad, it can be narrow, and it can be clear or fuzzy. So I got a lot of toys here because we use them as incentives in the after school program. We give skill awards for the student who can teach the lesson on attention. We give them a flashlight. The student that can demonstrate kind of sitting mindfully and watching the timers, we give them prizes. We have these balance birds. If this guy's got, if you get balance there. So if they can feel that beak, that's happening now. And then they get a sense of resilience and balance. So this is like one of the awards that we give very early on. We have mindful communication games. And most proud is we did a t-shirt at Monroe Middle School with some kids that stayed with the program the whole year. They actually got hoodies that talked about opening minds, or uncaging your mind will uncage your heart. So I always thought that was pretty good. Let's see. There we go. I brought some stuff, some handouts and some stuff about mindful schools if you're interested. If you would like, when we get our act together and get our database together and be communicated to, we have sheets on the paper for your contact information. If anybody is particularly interested in learning more about mindful schools and how we can support people's education in that, they've gotten more expensive, but our nonprofit, we've provided over 200 free mindful schools courses. And so it's sort of, they do a good job, so we didn't need to reinvent the wheel, but now they're charging more for it, so we're going to figure it out. But anybody who's interested, I would love to have your contact, and we could start you on mindful schools depending on how many people want it. Any other questions?